A strange metal sphere fell from the sky near Buga, Colombia, and nothing about it made sense. Tools could not scratch it, scans could not explain it, and the symbols carved around its middle did not match anything on Earth. Scientists argued over what it was, but the mystery took a sharp turn when Bob Lazar stepped in. He noticed something hidden in the markings that no one else saw, and what he unlocked pushed the entire investigation into new, frightening territory. What he found will blow your mind. The fall over Buga, a sphere not meant for Earth. The fall over Buga began on a quiet night when a sharp streak of light cut across the sky. Farmers later said it looked like a burning star moving too fast to belong there. A few seconds after the streak vanished, a deep thud rolled across the fields. It was not loud in the usual way. It felt more like pressure moving through the ground, enough to make windows vibrate and animals shift nervously in their pens. By morning, villagers started walking toward the area where the sound had come from. They found a round metal sphere sitting in a shallow dent in the soil. It was about the size of a medicine ball. The ground was freshly broken around it, but the sphere itself looked untouched. There were no dents, cracks, or burn marks. The surface felt cold even while the sun rose higher. People who touched it said the temperature made no sense, as if the object ignored the heat around it. Word spread quickly, and curious locals gathered until officials arrived to block the area. Before they could stop anyone, several videos had already been posted online. They showed the strange metal surface glowing slightly in the morning light. Some viewers claimed it looked too smooth, almost like liquid frozen in a perfect shape. Scientists soon reached the site with tools that were supposed to cut through almost anything. They placed drills against the surface, but the bits sparked and skidded off without leaving a mark. Diamond cutters did no better. One of the metallurgists watching the tests said the sphere behaved like a material beyond anything in their catalogs. When they looked at the surface under portable microscopes, they found no seams, welds, or grain lines. It did not look manufactured in any known way. One expert said it felt like something grown, not built, although he could not explain what that meant. While equipment failed to make physical changes to the object, something else caught the attention of the team. The sphere bent light in a strange way. Sunlight seemed to curve along its surface instead of bouncing off it with a normal shine. This created a faint, shifting halo that changed shape whenever someone moved nearby. Even more unsettling was what happened when they placed a small generator close to it. The sphere gave off a low hum, steady and flat, almost like a quiet vibration inside the metal. Every time they adjusted the distance or the type of electrical source, the hum changed slightly. These early tests pushed the investigation forward at a fast pace. Officials tried to keep the site secure, but the leaked videos had already attracted global interest. People online argued over whether the sphere was a weapon, a meteor, or something from outside Earth. Scientists who watched the footage privately wondered the same thing. Nothing in their first measurements or tests offered a familiar answer. The sphere refused to act like any known object. It felt engineered, but not with any technique used by humans. It created a sense of quiet warning, as if the object was waiting for someone to understand it. Everything changed when researchers discovered strange markings carved around its middle.
Symbols of intent, glyphs, layers, and a living blueprint. Before Bob Lazar came on board, the sphere was taken to a secure laboratory in California. The facility was placed under tight control, and only a selected group of specialists was allowed inside. The team was led by physicist José Luis Velázquez, a man known for his sharp instincts and deep experience with unusual materials. Yet even he admitted that the Buga Sphere was unlike anything he had studied. He described it as something that felt intentional, as if it had been shaped with a purpose that no familiar science could explain. The first major discovery came when the team examined the sphere's midline with enhanced imaging tools, a single ring of 24 repeating symbols wrapped perfectly around the equator. These symbols were separated by 6 thin divider marks between each one. No strokes were out of place, and the precision looked absolute. When Velázquez compared the markings with global language databases, the system produced nothing. There were no matches to any alphabet, ancient or modern. The glyphs did not behave like letters or numbers. They repeated in a sequence, yet the structure suggested something more controlled than simple decoration. The team then moved on to imaging scans. They used X-ray systems, neutron scanners, and magnetic field mapping tools. What appeared inside the sphere challenged every assumption. Instead of gears, coils, or solid metal, the scans revealed folded layers that looked similar to biological tissues. The layers seemed to overlap and compress like organic structures.
Velasquez said it reminded him of muscle fibers packed into a perfect spherical shape. These layers were dense but not rigid. They absorbed the scanning waves in a pattern that felt more alive than mechanical. At the center of the sphere was the most puzzling feature, a branching network of copper-like strands spread outward from a central dark node. The strands resembled neural pathways. They curved, split, and converged in patterns that looked too natural to be manufactured. The central node absorbed nearly all scanning signals, leaving its composition unknown. The geometry of the branching network matched harmonic ratios seen in living cells and magnetic field behavior. This connection to biological and electromagnetic systems opened a new line of thought that unsettled many researchers. The team brought in artificial intelligence models to study the symbols on the surface. After running pattern recognition tests, the AI produced a result that none of the researchers expected. The sequence of the 24 glyphs matched the electrical charge layout of a specific 24 amino acid neuropeptide. In biology, a neuropeptide is a molecule that carries signals between cells. The match was extremely precise, which made it difficult to dismiss as coincidence. This result bothered Velasquez because it suggested something very plain and unsettling. If the glyphs followed the same structure as a biological signaling molecule, then they were not meant to be read like a sentence. They were not decorative markings or a coded message for an outside observer. They behaved more like instructions that a living system would follow to carry out an action. In living organisms, molecules with similar patterns control very specific processes. They trigger growth, movement, memory formation, and chemical changes. So if the sphere's symbols had the same structure, the most reasonable interpretation was that the symbols were telling the sphere what to do. This led the team to a direct conclusion. The markings might be part of the sphere's internal operating system. If that was true, then the sphere was not presenting information for someone to interpret. It was using the symbols to regulate itself. The surface might function the same way a biological system uses molecular sequences to control its own behavior. This changed the focus of the investigation. The question was no longer about what the symbols meant. The question became whether the sphere was performing an active process. The team had to consider that the sphere might not be carrying a message at all. It might be carrying out a task. That question reached a peak when Bob Lazar entered the investigation.
Enter Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar entered the investigation at a moment when the research team felt they had reached a wall. His name came up after one of the researchers noticed something familiar in the sphere's electromagnetic readings. The pattern reminded him of a document written years earlier by Lazar about field systems that did not rely on normal propulsion or mechanical engines. Once word reached Lazar, he requested access to the scans and preliminary reports. His request was approved quietly, partly because the team had no one else with his unusual background. Bob Lazar became widely known in the late 1980s after claiming he had worked at a classified facility where he studied gravity-based propulsion systems from recovered craft. Many scientists dismissed his story. Others felt he described principles that were too specific to ignore. What made Lazar interested in the Buga Sphere was his experience with materials that did not behave like anything on Earth. He had spoken before about metals that could alter fields, reactors with unknown fuel sources, and control systems built around patterns instead of buttons or switches. These ideas matched the early findings from the sphere. When Lazar first saw the reports from Colombia, he reacted with surprising calm. According to leaked reports, he read the notes slowly, page by page, without asking questions. He studied the images of the 24 glyphs and the divider marks. He paused on the scans that showed the copper network and the dark central node. With the full picture in mind, he began to make theories. He said the object did not look like a weapon or a vehicle, and it reminded him of something that shaped fields in a controlled way. The Buga Sphere, he suggested, could be called a field modulator. He explained that some systems he had seen worked by reading patterns on their own surface. According to him, these markings acted like operational commands instead of decorative or linguistic carvings. If that was true for the Buga Sphere, then each glyph might be a part of a sequence the device used to manage its inner processes. Lazar then focused on the branching network inside the sphere. He said it looked similar to the way nerves carry signals in a brain. To him, this meant the sphere was built to sense and shape electromagnetic activity.
This bothered some members of the team because it supported the idea that the sphere acted more like a living system than a machine. Lazar also warned them about the dark center. He said it might be the part that processes incoming signals. If it received the wrong type of signal, the sphere might turn on or change state in a way no one could predict. At the end of his first review, Lazar said something that changed the mood in the lab. He said the sphere did not look like something meant to move or store power. In his view, it was built to think. Despite the warning, what Lazar revealed next pushed the mystery into new and unsettling territory.
Bob Lazar studied the sphere for weeks before he noticed something important. The copper lines inside the sphere split and branched in a repeating way, and every branch lined up with one of the strange symbols on the outside. This made him test how the inside reacted when he changed the strength of the electromagnetic field around it. Each time he adjusted the field, the copper network inside the sphere reacted. A small change on the outside created a ripple inside that matched a specific symbol. That was the moment he knew the symbols were not random. Lazar started treating the symbols like instructions. He used scanners to watch how the inside of the sphere changed whenever he sent different frequencies into it. Every time he did this, a different path lit up inside the network, and each path always connected to a matching symbol. It was as if the sphere was reading the symbol and then responding to it. By repeating this many times, he discovered 24 clear response patterns. Each one matched one of the 24 symbols. Then he noticed the 6 divider marks between groups of symbols. These marks acted like reset points. Whenever the energy inside the sphere reached a divider mark, the entire system inside started over from the beginning. He ran the same test over and over, and the result was always the same. The sphere followed a full cycle of steps, then reset when it reached a divider, then started the program again. Once he understood the symbols, the dividers, and the response patterns, Lazar built a small test model out of copper wire and a thin metal shell. The model did not float or power itself like the real sphere, but it copied the same reaction pattern. This proved the sphere was running a programmed sequence written on its surface. Instead of using computer chips or memory cards, the instructions were built directly into its shape, spacing, and how it reacted to certain frequencies. Lazar compared his model to the real sphere and saw the same step-by-step responses, the same order of reactions, and the same reset points. This showed the symbols were not decoration. They formed a complete set of instructions that told the sphere when to start, when to shift its internal energy, when to move to the next step, and when to reset. Lazar called it a geometric operating script. The symbols were the commands. The copper network acted like the processor. The frequencies acted like the triggers that activated each command. Everything worked together in a simple but extremely advanced system. When Lazar quietly shared his findings with the small research team, they realized how unusual the sphere truly was. It had no wires, no plugs, no normal machine parts, yet it could run a full program with perfect timing. Its design and its function were the same thing. But the biggest shock came when Lazar finally figured out what the script was telling the sphere to do.
Cracking the script meant that Lazar could go back to the code with fresh eyes. The patterns he mapped earlier began to look less like the instructions of a machine and more like the behavior of something that could sense and respond. The frequencies inside the sphere shifted in ways that reminded him of how neurons fire when thoughts form. Every glyph sequence triggered a field pattern that behaved almost like a living response. This was the first clue that the sphere might not be a tool or a propulsion core. It might be something designed to interact with life itself. He studied the central node again. Earlier, he saw it as the heart of the processor. Now he noticed that its behavior changed whenever researchers moved their hand closer to the sphere. The node reacted to bioelectric fields. Its flickering pulses rose in rhythm with the faint electrical signals the human body always gives off. This reminded him of how certain parts of the brain respond to emotional states. It felt like the sphere recognized the presence of a living being. The more Lazar studied the tests, the more shocking the results became. He mapped some of the frequency loops the sphere generated on its own, and when he matched them to known scientific data, he made a discovery that shook him. The patterns aligned with neural pathways in the human hippocampus. These were pathways known to be tied to memory formation and emotional association. The fact that the sphere was generating similar patterns without being connected to any living brain suggested it was built to read or create those patterns.
Lazar took apart a thin section of the inner layer using a non-intrusive scanner. The readings showed flexible structures that shifted like adaptive tissue. They were not organic, yet they behaved like something waiting to activate. It felt like he was looking at a synthetic version of biological response cells. The idea of a metal sphere that behaved like living tissue raised more questions than answers. Lazar studied more tests and reports from the researchers and realized that the sphere had sent stable resonance bursts into the room. These bursts were organized and repeated in clear patterns, which he believed to be forms of communication, not speech in the human sense, but structured resonance meant to convey information. It was as if the sphere could think in a language built on frequency and geometry. After weeks of study, Lazar reached a firm conclusion. The sphere was not a tool, not a weapon, and not a power source. It was a biosynthesis machine designed to behave like a living system. It could sense changes around it, adjust its internal activity. The patterns on its surface were not simple controls. They were instructions for a type of artificial mind built into the sphere. Lazar warned the team that running the full sequence of symbols might activate the sphere in a way they could not predict. He believed the sphere might wake up if all the commands were triggered in the correct order, but the warning came too late. The next test pushed the sphere beyond its quiet, inactive state.